Extending your practice, why short meditations only skim the surface, and how to go deeper. Most people in our digital age, if they meditate at all, do so intermittently, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. To be completely honest, it's better than nothing. It may turn the volume of stress down just a bit, but it barely skims the surface. Underneath sits the real load of the stresses of daily life, a brain and body on sensory overload, and a backlog of stagnant, often conflicted, and even highly charged emotions. I'm Ben, Oofana, and I'm traveling quite a lot in this past week and the weeks coming up. So I have just a window of time to film a few videos, which I'm doing today. And since my articles are so in-depth, so much detail that I want to include, I will be referring to my article. As a lot of journalists, academics, and others who have in-depth content and they want to make sure they say what needs to be said, do. So anyway, let's dive into it. Because most people were never taught how to work effectively with their emotions, they're not digesting their lived experiences or their responses to it, and the backlog accumulates in their body. And it pains me to witness the damage being done. I see it and feel it, and I do my best to articulate what I'm sensing in the bodies and minds of the people I work with. Receptivity varies. Some recognize the harmful effects and others lack awareness. There's also willingness. Some dabble, do a few sessions and disappear. Others are not receptive at all. And then there's a small percentage who follow through, taking the steps necessary to heal their bodies and minds in the deep emotional wounds and truly transform themselves. In my early 20s, when I was first drawn to meditation, I would sit cross-legged on the floor with my back against the wall for support, often sitting for an hour or two at a time, yet I was inconsistent. I was drawn back into meditation in my mid-20s when I found myself reenacting the traumas of my childhood and adolescence in my attempts to form intimate relationships. Training with the traditional Native American doctor, medicine man from the Kiowa tribe, and years later with the master from China in the internal martial arts of Xing Quan, Baguazhang, Tai Chi, and Qigong, gave me an added advantage because I was keenly aware of those before me who had attained mastery through hours of intensive daily practice. Inspired by their examples, my own intensive daily practice was driven by a simple desire to attain ever higher levels of mastery. Most people carry a lot: past traumas, losses, hardships, years of undigested emotions, and then they face daily stresses that keep evoking more. With work pressures, relationship strain, old wounds, and the added input of digital feeds, the load keeps growing. Over time, it condenses into a heavy congealed residue that saturates the body's organs, tissues, and cells. Saturated with this stagnant buildup of stress, undigested emotions, and physical toxin, the body simply doesn't function as well. As I mentioned, most people are not doing any form of consistent meditation practice, and even when they do, it's usually no longer than 20 minutes. Much of what they're doing, while it may help calm them by relieving some of the outermost layers of tension, doesn't facilitate the deep level processing of the stresses and emotions they're carrying in their bodies. As I work with people, I can't help but see and feel what they're carrying: work-related stress, heartache, and the emotions that arise in response to other relational difficulties. I have them bring the situation, concern, or person to the forefront of their awareness and notice what they're feeling in their bodies and where these feelings live. Then I have them breathe softly and deeply, fully immersing their awareness in the depths of any feelings and bodily sensations that arise. We stay with these feelings and sensations, following them as they move through their progression. In many instances, the sensations intensify at first, then often expand or shift into other parts of the body, and then gradually become more diffuse. Beginning a practice of meditation can be a real stretch for many people. 10, 15, or even 20 minutes may be all one can do at first. Yet, if you want results, it's important to increase the duration. As I work with people, I tell them plainly, realistically, it's going to take at least an hour of consistent daily practice to keep up with the various challenges you're facing, along with the stresses generating by what you're going through and your emotional responses to it all. In other words, you need at minimum an hour a day to digest your lived experiences and your emotional responses. And to be completely honest, even that's not always enough, especially for those of us contending with past or present trauma, living through chronically stressful realities, or struggling with attachment issues or other deep hurts. This is why we need to make consistent use of the most effective therapeutic modalities. For instance, I do sensory deprivation, flotation sessions, and deep tissue massage. I've worked with gifted healers whenever the opportunity presented itself. I've also gone through dozens of vision quests, a traditional Native American practice that involves fasting alone in the mountains for 4 days and nights without food and water. Having suffered a great deal of childhood and adolescent trauma, I've struggled with attachment issues, and that has at times played out in my relationships. In the work I do to facilitate healing for others, I invest deeply in the people I work with because I genuinely do care, and I want to see each individual I work with heal and realize their true potential. And like everyone else, I have to make a living. Yet it can be difficult when I'm dealing with inconsistency, flakiness, unexplained disappearances, ghosting mid-process, and at times volatility in people still carrying trauma, and yes, the occasional asshole. Before learning to work effectively with my emotional responses, and when I wasn't practicing consistently or taking adequate time to practice, the heaviness and pain remained trapped in my body. For significant periods of time, I was caught in a tangle of grief, sadness, hurt, and confusion and other convoluted emotions and thoughts, and that could be incapacitating. The drama kept perpetuating itself, the suffering dragged out much longer, and that tangle colored my interactions and how I related to other people and the world around me. For the longest time, I felt as though I were flailing in the dark. Yet intuitively, I realized I needed to become more consistent in my practice and to extend the time I spent practicing. During some of the most difficult times, I would sit and practice. Sometimes I would lie on my side, curled up, or I would walk for hours, breathing from the depths of any distressing or heavy emotions I was feeling and any bodily sensations that arose. As I continued to practice, there were many instances when I felt a situation left me stressed out or stirred a range of unpleasant emotions, and I was able to work through it in a matter of minutes. Then there were times when my deepest vulnerabilities were triggered, when a relationship was ending, when I was getting crazy making ambiguous signals, or when I was already on the edge and had to deal with erratic, inconsistent behavior from people not willing to do the work. Those periods brought a whole range of painful and at times excruciating emotions. Whenever I found myself confronted with these issues, I would begin my practice by bringing the issue, situation, or person to the forefront of my awareness. I would then notice what I was feeling in response and where those feelings were held within my body. I would breathe softly and deeply, fully immersing my awareness in the depths of the feelings and sensations that arose. It would often take me a few hours to cycle through the heaviness, grief, and other distressing emotions. Yet as I continued to practice, I could feel my body and mind's innate healing intelligence activating. By the third hour, I could feel the pain, heaviness and other convoluted feelings and thoughts gradually dissolving. I not only felt considerably lighter, but I also experienced a whole range of pleasurable feelings and sensations, along with a greater sense of connection to my authentic core and to a higher power. I was gaining perspective on the person or people involved and the dynamics of the situation. I could also see more options, and in many instances, I would come up with more creative, workable solutions. Unhealthy attachments to people, situations, and outcomes also began to dissolve. Even when faced with difficult or challenging people or situations, I find it much easier to adapt when appropriate, and if necessary, to let go and walk away. When I do step back and let go, it creates a vacuum. Often other people and opportunities appear. During the times when I've been confronted with the more difficult issues and situations that trigger my deepest vulnerabilities, I find that when I practice consistently for extended periods, I can cycle through whatever I'm facing and all of the emotions that arise at a greatly accelerated pace. Rather than remaining strung out, incapacitated, I become increasingly resilient. I'm able to digest my lived experiences and my emotional responses, accept what cannot be changed, and let go when necessary, bounce back, and adapt accordingly. Sitting for long periods of meditation isn't feasible for everyone, especially when life circumstances are not conducive. When you're already working long hours, commuting considerable distances, working and going to school, or caring for young children or elderly parents, yet many of us have more available time than we realize or are willing to admit. Consider how much time you spend watching Netflix or scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, or other feeds. Devoting at least a good portion, if not all, of that time to meditation is obviously a much healthier choice. The problem for many of us is that the demands placed upon us, coupled with excessive use of our devices, have rewired our brains in ways that are not conducive to intensive practice. Developing a consistent practice will require an investment of time and real commitment on your part. And as you do, you're literally rewiring your attentional circuitry. Like most people living on planet Earth at this time in history, I'm affected by the challenges of modern day life and the not so healthy aspects of digital technology. And I admit there have been many times when I wasn't consistent in my own practice. Looking back, I sometimes feel a sense of regret, especially as I reflect on the wasted time and the fact that I suffered far longer than necessary from some of the traumas and crazy-making relational drama I endured. Had I been consistent in my practice and done so for the amount of time needed to heal, I would have moved through it all at a much more accelerated pace. In those days, I had no guidance. It was up to me to find my own way, yet I've applied the lessons I've learned as I go forward in life. Over time, as I've continued to practice and make consistent use of the most effective therapeutic interventions, the old traumas and attachment wounds began to heal. Having digested so much of the accumulated emotional residue, I wasn't hauling the same backlog of grief, sadness, and other distressing emotions. I wasn't in pain so much of the time. I felt lighter. When I sat down to practice, I often found myself in a calm and neutral space. And yet I could sense that much of what I was carrying remained embedded in the body's organs and tissues. So I began to explore more directly, bringing my awareness into specific organs and parts of the body. There have been many times when I focused my awareness within the heart, abdomen, throat, pelvis, and even the brain itself. With soft, steady breath and sustained attention, deeper layers surfaced. Emotions, memories, and thought processes, many of which had long operated outside of my conscious awareness. I stayed with them, breathing through their progression, and gradually they came into conscious awareness. What had been dense was transformed and integrated as a newly emerged, healthy part of me. The basic premise of the system of practices I've developed is to work with whatever life gives you. In March 2020, I had just returned to the United States from Sri Lanka as the country and much of the world went into lockdown. I suddenly had all this additional time on my hands and wasn't quite sure what to do with myself. Rather than waste hours scrolling through feeds and binging on documentaries, I committed to doing at least 3 hours of intensive daily meditation. During those lengthy meditations, I encountered a lot of internal resistance that at times made it difficult to continue. I felt restless and antsy. I kept opening my eyes to see how much time had passed. Parts of my back were tensing up and were kind of painful. Rather than giving in, I trained myself to acknowledge any feelings and bodily sensations and then go even deeper into them. I would breathe with my awareness fully immersed in the tension and at times the pain in my back and into the discomfort that comes from being completely present with myself with all its feelings and sensations for such an extended period of time. The tightness would gradually soften, the pain would ease, the almost unbearable sense of being completely still with myself would abate. As I remained present with the full range of feelings and bodily sensations, I could feel myself crossing over multiple thresholds into progressively deeper levels of awareness. As I continued to practice, emotions and thought processes that had been operating from my subconscious began to surface. Material that I had been oblivious to. I started to recognize the underlying cognitive and emotional forces that had been driving the dysfunctional patterns I had enacted in my relationships and other interactions. The more I kept diving into the internal resistance, the more I could feel myself entering progressively deeper, more powerful, and more enjoyable states of meditation. I could also feel the innate healing intelligence within me activating along with a comforting presence flowing from within. You will too very likely encounter resistance as you extend your own meditation practice. Restlessness, boredom, agitation, and incessant need to open your eyes to check how much time has passed. Acknowledge what you're feeling in these moments, and to the best of your ability, breathe softly and deeply as you fully immerse your awareness in the depths of any feelings or bodily sensations that arise. As you do so, you will be working your way down through multiple thresholds of consciousness. Many people today think they're set with their daily 20-minute meditation session. Yet, most have never really had any real exposure to the ancient lineages where meditation has been practiced for thousands of years. In every tradition I'm familiar with, those who develop real depth put in hours of intensive daily practice. In the internal martial arts, especially Xing Quan, Bagua, which are rooted in Taoism, serious practitioners often train from 2 to 6 or even more hours a day. Training usually begins with Qigong to build internal power, then moves into extensive practice of the forms, circle walking in Bagua, standing postures in Xing Quan such as Santi and squatting monkey, the 5-element fist, the 12 animal forms, and line training, plus partner drills and fighting applications with Qigong woven through every layer. In Buddhism, practice time is going to vary significantly according to tradition and season. They're going to practice a lot more if they're having intensive retreats. But typically, it's common in many of these traditions to practice at least 3 or 4 hours a day. And in some traditions, and especially during times where they're doing intensives, to begin in the early morning hours and often go into the evening. And that could involve possibly 12 or 14 or upwards to even 16 hours of intensive meditation practice a day. In the Hindu Vedic traditions, some of the advanced yogis enter what's referred to as a state of samadhi, which is they're basically in a intensively deep state of meditation all the time. And they can at times do so for days, weeks, months, or even longer. If you truly want to experience the power of meditation and to heal and transform yourself, I encourage you to stay open and be willing to explore the different practices, such as those taught in Buddhist or Hindu Vedic traditions, as well as the system of meditation that I've developed and have been teaching for over 3 decades. In concluding this video, for those of you who are ready to extend your meditation practice and go deeper, I can help you to develop a daily practice that you will actually do, and to show you how to move through, to work with the internal resistance when it does arise. Call 332-333-5155 if you have any questions, or to schedule a session, or visit benoofana.com or teachmetomeditate.com to learn more.